This video will contain spoilers for Legion Season 2, Episode 6. So if you don't want any spoilers, please do not watch this video until you have seen the episode. So this episode was quite unique. It didn't really deal with the main storyline. What it did is showed us the multiple versions of David, like as in the multiverse theory. But we don't find this out until a lot later in the episode, around halfway, because in the beginning it's quite confusing. We basically get told 4 different stories and it's very confusing until you understand what's actually happening. The first story we're going to be talking about is the Hobo David. Now, we don't really know how Hobo David really got to this position, but we can assume that he refused to take his meds and he didn't go to the asylum. And going to the asylum is a really main key thing about David and who he is and what he becomes. We'll get into that a little bit later. But for Hobo David, he doesn't really do much, and you can see him talking to himself most of the time alone, and I think his sister probably abandoned him at this point. You see him scrounging for food and walking around alone most of the episode until a group of guys come up to him and basically start beating on him. And then he basically, I don't know, does a panic explosion, and I'm assuming he kills all of them. After that, Hobo David doesn't really, again, do much. You see him walking around, and then the cops are after him, but it's not just the cops, it's the agency he was supposed to join. They're also after him at this point because I guess he's irredeemable at this point. So what I assume is the Shadow King that we see in Season 1 never gets dealt with. And that's the biggest issue for this David, because he didn't go to the asylum, he never got the help, he never got the Shadow King out of his head. So I assume he's struggling for control on who's in charge this entire time, and until he finally cracked. And this is what happens if he doesn't go to the asylum or doesn't take his meds. And this also leads to his sister abandoning him. So there you go. But so the story of Hobo David ends pretty quickly. He basically ends up getting killed by Carrie because he became, I guess, too much of a problem. Next, we're going to be talking about a different David. A David that I call Drugged David. Now, Drugged David has a interesting story, kind of. In his story, I don't think he ever goes to the asylum, but he does take his medication all the time. And that makes him very slow. When he's talking or doing anything, his eyes are going really slow. He's talking really slow. He looks like he's not really there. And I guess that's the side effects of the meds he's taking all the time. But the meds didn't really solve the real problem, which is Farouk. Farouk is still in his head, and later on in the episode, you do see Farouk appear the way he looked in Season 1. So that problem is still there. Now, here's the thing I don't get. Farouk actually forces David to fight some cops. I don't know why he did that, because I thought Farouk's main goal is to preserve David. Because, you know, if David gets hurt, doesn't Farouk also kind of get hurt because they're sharing the same body? But either way, Farouk tricks David into basically attacking some cops. And the cops are not happy about this, and they proceed to try and arrest him, and his sister arrives at the same time to try and pick him up from his work. And by the way, he works at a, I guess, boxing company. I don't really know what to call it. He just moves packages all day. And so, you know, as the situation is escalating, you see drugged up David get more and more kind of crazy into insanity territory. He proceeds to completely squish one of the police officers, and after that more cops arrive. I don't know what he's doing here, but he does something to basically make it so that all the cops in the area are gone. I don't know if they're dead or where they are, or maybe they're in the floor, who knows. But he does get shot in the back, and that causes him to not be able to walk. So at the end, this David ends up in a wheelchair, and his mind is completely gone. He's just not there at all. And finally, it brings us to the last David. Well, not the last David, I guess second last, because there's also the main story David that we do get to see a little bit. I like to call this David Rich David. Okay, so Rich David is kind of interesting. His storyline is probably the better of the two that we've seen so far. So we see Rich David as just a coffee delivery guy, or I guess somebody that's like an intern at the company. He's giving the coffee out to all the people. There's like a business meeting going on, and so this David can read everyone's mind. like he can't control it, like all the thoughts just keep going to his head. So he knows what everyone's thinking, and he knows that the other side, the other party, is actually trying to rip off this lady. And so at towards the end, David didn't really want to do it, but he called out, hey, don't take the deal. And everybody basically laughed at him, and basically he got fired from his job. But the lady later went to him and asked him, hey, why'd you say that? Like, what reason do you have, or what proof? And he proceeds to say that he's a psychic, but obviously she doesn't believe him. But he gives her proof by basically reading her mind multiple times. And then later on in the episode, we see that David has turned out to be quite wealthy and successful. The lady you see in the photo right there is actually the lady we saw in the beginning of the episode, which I think is really interesting. And after that, we basically see a meeting with his sister. Well, not a meeting. The sister showed up, and the sister saying, hey, I want another house. So this David is apparently very, very wealthy, and probably almost owns the whole world. He proceeds to basically go like, no, I'm not going to give you another house. And the next thing that happened really shocked me, because he gave his sister a nosebleed. Now, you may be thinking, why is this weird? Because David cares for his sister more than anything else in the world. So the fact that he's doing this to his sister, something has gone wrong with this David, or something went right. I'm not really sure. But we find out what happened very soon. So Farouk, the Shadow King, the real Shadow King, not like the monster version we've seen in season 1, has pretty much completely taken over this David, or they made some kind of a deal to become one. I don't really know, but I'm pretty sure this David doesn't really exist anymore. Shadow King took him over completely and proceeded to dominate the world. We do see another version of David, which is our main timeline David. So for our main timeline David, we don't really get anything new here. It's basically everything we already seen in season 1 and some stuff from season 2. But overall, this episode was quite interesting, even though it wasn't what I expected it to be. Because last episode we didn't really get a lot of story. I mean, yes, we got a huge twist at the end of the episode, and that was amazing. This episode, we don't get anything that furthers the story, and I think that's the same thing that also happened in episode 4. So that's kind of disappointing. Having 2 episodes essentially as filler does kind of suck, but I will say this. The presentation of this episode and how it was shown was excellent. Because for you guys, I actually made it so that, all the David stories are linear. But that's not how they were presented. In true Legion fashion, all of the stories were told at the same time. Not only that, we were also shown the future first and then the past. So we had no idea what was going on at all. On top of all that, they also put some other Davids in there. They didn't really have a storyline, they were just there to show other possibilities that could have happened. I'm going to show you guys some of those Davids right now real quick, just so you guys have an idea. One of the Davids was like a glue sniffer, which was really interesting, and he has a desk job. One of the Davids was looking pretty loony, like he's gone almost completely insane. And one of the David looks like he came out on top because he has a family and he has a big house. So that's probably the best thing you can have as David. We also have a dead David and we have a baby David. But yeah, overall this episode was quite interesting. I enjoyed it. There wasn't any main story, which does kind of make me upset. I do wish that maybe we would have gotten some main story towards the end. Maybe show the Shadow King or something. That would have made the episode a lot better, in my opinion. Overall, a solid episode. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below, and I will see you guys in the next video. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, comment, and consider subscribing to support the channel. If you didn't enjoy the video, you know what to do, and I will see you guys in the next video.